When a wounded human crash lands on a backwater mining colony, the alien workers dismiss him as just another fragile species bleeding out in the dust. But his cubs, those small humans with their innocent faces and wide eyes, don't panic. They don't weep. They watch him bleed with an eerie calm, and when one whispers a chilling promise about what happens to those who harm their kind, the aliens realize they've made a catastrophic mistake. This isn't a story about humanity's strength. It's a warning about humanity's wrath, told through the eyes of those who learn too late that you should never, ever hurt a human in front of their young. The first thing you need to understand about humans is that they bleed red, bright, angry red, not the pale blue of Venturi blood, not the silver ichor of the Krell, just red, like a warning light you ignored until it was too late. I know this because I watched Marcus Rain bleed all over Bay 7's landing platform, and I did absolutely nothing about it. My name is the Conar, and I'm what you'd call a docking supervisor on Station Epsilon 9, which is a fancy way of saying I stand around making sure cargo haulers don't crash into each other while pretending I have authority. It's not glamorous work, but it keeps my feeding appendages busy and my 3 younglings fed back on the homeworld. The day everything went sideways started like any other. Boring, predictable. The kind of shift where your biggest concern is whether the recycled protein paste in the commissary will give you digestive issues again. Then the human ship came screaming in without clearance codes, trailing plasma fire and spinning like a drunk Krellian on festival day. Supervisor the Kenner, my assistant Vess, came skittering across the deck plates, all 6 of his legs moving in that panicked rhythm that made my head fronds twitch with annoyance. Unscheduled arrival. Bay 7. No transponder codes. Then deny them landing clearance, I said, not even looking up from my datapad. Standard protocol, Vess. We've been over this. But sir, they're already landing. That got my attention. By the time I hauled my considerable bulk to Bay 7's observation window, the human vessel had somehow managed to set down without exploding, which I considered a minor miracle given that half its hull was missing. Smoke poured from a dozen breaches, and the whole thing listed to one side like it might fall over if someone sneezed nearby. The airlock hissed open, and Marcus Rain stumbled out. I'd seen humans before, of course. Everyone had, ever since they'd burst onto the galactic stage about 50 cycles ago with their loud voices, louder ships, and that insufferable optimism that made my mandibles ache. But I'd never seen one that looked quite like this. He was tall for his species, maybe 6 feet in their measurement, with dark hair matted with blood and dirt. His clothing, some kind of utility jumpsuit, was torn and scorched. And the blood, stars above. The blood. It ran down his left side in rivulets, pooling on the deck plates beneath his boots. Medical assistance? He croaked, swaying. I need theirs. Then he collapsed. Just dropped like someone had cut his strings. Vess, get medical here now. I was already moving, my bulk surprisingly quick when motivated. We had protocols for this kind of thing, emergency procedures drilled into us until we could recite them while sleeping. But then the cubs appeared. 2 of them, stepping carefully through the smoke still pouring from the ship. Small humans, maybe half the size of their father. The female had dark hair pulled back in a tail, couldn't have been more than 10 cycles old. The male was smaller, 8 at most, with those unsettling forward-facing eyes that all predators share. The girl's name was Luna Rain, I learned later. The boy was called Atlas. They should have been screaming. By all the gods of all the homeworlds, they should have been making noise, calling for help, showing some kind of emotional distress. Their father was bleeding out on my deck, probably dying, and these cubs just walked over to him with an eerie, calculating silence. Luna knelt beside her father, pressing her small hands against the wound in his side. Her movements were efficient, practiced. Atlas disappeared back into the smoking ship and emerged seconds later with a metal case marked with that red cross symbol humans use for medical supplies. Your father needs help, I said, trying to keep my voice calm even though my heart analog was hammering. We have medics coming. We know what to do, Luna said, not even glancing at me. Her voice was steady, cold, almost. She pulled supplies from the case Atlas had brought, some kind of foam sealant that she sprayed directly into the wound. Marcus groaned, his eyes fluttering open. Luna, Atlas, did they? We're fine, Dad, Atlas said quietly. He was holding his father's hand now, but there was something in his posture that made my feeding appendages twitch with unease. We're all fine. The others, Marcus whispered. Luna's hands paused for just a fraction of a second. Dead. All of them. I felt Vess arrive beside me, heard his sharp intake of breath. What happened to them? He whispered. Raiders, Luna said, still working on her father with those terrifyingly steady hands. Kralian pirates. They boarded us near the Tarsus Belt. Thought we'd be easy prey because we're just a small transport. They killed the crew? I asked, though I already knew the answer. They killed everyone except us, Atlas said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. That should have been my first warning. They thought we were just cargo, just things to sell. Marcus coughed, blood flecking his lips. Kids don't. It's okay, Dad, Luna said, her voice suddenly tender as she looked at her father. Save your strength. Where were my medics? I triggered the emergency comm again, more urgently this time. Medical to Bay 7. We have a critical injury. Human male, significant blood loss. Acknowledged, came the reply. 3 minutes out. 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, Marcus Rain might be dead. The cubs didn't seem worried. Luna had stopped the worst of the bleeding with that foam, and now she was checking her father's pulse, monitoring his breathing. Atlas had produced a small injector and was preparing some kind of medication with the casual confidence of someone 3 times his age. You've done this before, I said. It wasn't a question. Dad taught us, Atlas replied simply. He said humans who travel the void need to know how to survive when no one else can help them. Smart man, Vess murmured beside me. Luna looked up then, really looked at me for the first time, and I felt something cold slither down my spine. Those eyes, human eyes. They focused on you with an intensity that suggested violence was always just one decision away. Supervisor the Kanar, she said, reading my name tag. Did you see any ships leave this station in the last hour? Kralian configuration? Probably a Raider-class vessel? No. We haven't had any departures in 2 hours. Why? Because they followed us here, Atlas said quietly. They wanted to make sure Dad was dead before they ran. The temperature in Bay 7 seemed to drop 10 degrees. You're saying there are Kralian raiders on my station? I managed. Luna smiled. It was not a reassuring expression. Not anymore. Before I could ask what that meant, Marcus Rain's eyes opened fully. Despite the blood loss, despite the obvious pain, he managed to focus on his daughter. Luna, what did you do? What you taught us to do, Dad. She squeezed his hand gently. We protected ourselves. The medical team finally arrived. 3 Venturi medics who immediately swarmed Marcus with scanners and portable equipment. They started asking questions in that rapid-fire way medics do, but I was still staring at the cubs. At Luna and Atlas, who stood there covered in their father's blood, faces calm, eyes cold. Supervisor, one of the medics called out, he's stable. We need to move him to the med bay immediately. These children did excellent work keeping him alive. As they loaded Marcus onto an anti-grav stretcher, he reached out and grabbed Luna's arm. Promise me, he whispered. Promise me you won't. We promise, Dad, Luna said softly. We'll behave. Something about the way she said that word, behave, made every survival instinct I possessed start screaming. They wheeled Marcus away and I was left standing there with 2 human cubs who should have been traumatized, terrified, broken. Instead, they just started methodically cleaning blood off their hands with antiseptic wipes from their medical kit. You'll need to file a report, I said weakly. About the attack. About what happened. Of course, Luna said politely. We'll cooperate fully with station security. Atlas looked up at his sister, and something passed between them. Some silent communication that made the air feel heavy. Then he said, in that same gentle voice, whoever attacked Dad doesn't know what we are. Luna's smile widened slightly. No, they really don't. And standing there in Bay 7, with human blood still pooling on my deck plates and 2 cubs looking at me with predator's eyes, I realized I'd made a terrible mistake. We all had. The thing about humans is that they're patient, not in the way the Venturi are patient, waiting centuries for their plans to mature, not in the calculated, methodical patience of my own species. No, human patience is something else entirely. It's the patience of a predator, watching prey from tall grass, muscles coiled, waiting for exactly the right moment to strike. I learned this watching Luna and Atlas reign over the next 6 hours. Station security arrived exactly 14 minutes after the medics took Marcus away. Captain Vorn was a Krellian himself, ironically enough, though he'd cut ties with the pirate clans decades ago. Big, scaled with those triple-jointed arms that could rip through hull plating if properly motivated. He took one look at the cubs and seemed to relax, probably thinking this would be easy. "All right, younglings," he rumbled in that bass voice Krellians use when they think they're being friendly. "Let's go somewhere comfortable, and you can tell me everything that happened." "Of course, Captain," Luna said sweetly. Too sweetly. "Can we see our father first, just to make sure he's okay?" Vorn glanced at me. I made a gesture that I hoped conveyed my unease, but he misread it entirely. "Sure, kid. Family first. I get it." The med bay was on level 3, a 10-minute walk through the station's main corridors. I followed, telling myself it was just supervisor diligence. Really, I was afraid to let these cubs out of my sight. Marcus was in surgery. The chief surgeon, a Venturi named Cassandra, met us outside the operating theater with good news. The wound was serious but not fatal. Another hour, and he'd be awake, probably complaining about the pain suppressants making him drowsy. Luna nodded, absorbing this information with that same eerie calm. "Thank you, doctor. That's wonderful news. You saved his life, you know," Cassandra said, her voice warm. "That foam sealant bought him the time he needed. Where did you learn field medicine?" "Our father taught us," Atlas replied. "He said humans who travel space need to know how to survive when everything goes wrong." "Wise man," Cassandra murmured. Captain Vorn cleared his throat. "Touching reunion aside, I still need statements. There's a dead pirate crew somewhere, and I need to know exactly what happened." Luna's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Dead, Captain. I never said they were dead." Vorn's scales rippled in confusion. "But you said the crew was killed. You said the raiders boarded your ship." "I said the raiders thought we'd be easy prey," Luna corrected gently. "I said they killed everyone except us. I never said what happened to them after that." The temperature seemed to drop again. "Kid, you're being cute with words," Vorn said, his patience fraying. "Either tell me straight or I'll have to detain you as material witnesses." Atlas looked at his sister. Luna looked back. Then, in perfect unison, they both shrugged. "There were 8 raiders," Atlas began. "They breached our hull near the cargo section, killed Captain Torres first, then Navigator Singh, then the 3 engineers. Dad tried to fight them off, got stabbed for his trouble. They thought they'd won," Luna continued seamlessly. "Thought they could just waltz in, take whatever they wanted, sell us at some backwater flesh market. They made a mistake, though." "What mistake?" I found myself asking, even though part of me didn't want to know. Luna's eyes found mine. They assumed we were helpless. Vorn was getting annoyed now. "So what happened to them?" "We killed them," Atlas said simply. "All 8. The corridor went silent. Vorn laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. "You? 2 cubs barely tall enough to reach a standard door panel? You killed 8 Krellian raiders?" 7 Krellian raiders, and 1 Torgathi enforcer, Luna corrected. The Torgathi was actually the hardest. You have to damage all 3, or they just keep coming. I felt my feeding appendages go numb. Vorn wasn't laughing anymore. "You're serious?" "Very," Atlas said. "Would you like to see the ship? The bodies are still there? Well, most of them. The one Dad calls the big ugly one got spaced when we blew the airlock, but the other 7 are in various pieces throughout the cargo hold." "Various pieces?" Vess whispered beside me. "We had to improvise weapons," Luna explained, still in that matter-of-fact tone that made everything worse. "Dad always says humans are tool users. We just got creative with what was available." Captain Vorn's comm unit chirped. He answered it, his eyes never leaving the cubs. As he listened, His scales went from their normal green to a pale, sickly yellow. I see. Yes. Understood. Send images. He closed the comm and just stared at the cubs for a long moment. My team just finished a preliminary scan of your ship, he said quietly. They found the bodies. What's left of them anyway?
He paused, his voice dropping even lower.
What in the seven hells did you use on them? Cargo loaders mostly, Atlas said. Hydraulic presses. One of them we trapped in the engine maintenance shaft and vented superheated coolant. That was messy. Another one, Luna got with a welding torch. That took a while. He screamed a lot, Luna added helpfully. Dad was unconscious by then, so we had time. I watched Captain Vaughn's face cycle through several emotions. Disbelief, horror, a growing creeping fear that I recognized because I was feeling it too. You're telling me, he said slowly, that you two children, no combat training, no weapons, systematically murdered 8 trained pirates. Well, when you say it like that, it sounds bad, Luna said, tilting her head. We prefer to call it self-defense. One of them begged, Atlas said conversationally. Near the end, said he had younglings of his own, asked us to spare him. Did you? Orn asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Luna's smile vanished. Her voice when she spoke was colder than void space. He watched them stab our father. He laughed about selling us. He called us cute little animals. She leaned forward slightly. So no, Captain. We didn't spare him. The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of the station's life support systems. You need to understand something, Atlas said, his young voice carrying a weight that shouldn't have been possible. Humans are very good at 3 things. We're good at surviving. We're good at adapting, and we're very, very good at violence when it's necessary. Our father taught us all 3, Luna added. She said, the universe is full of species that will see humans as weak because we don't have natural weapons. No claws, no venom, no armored scales. She looked directly at Vaughan. She said that makes us more dangerous, not less, because we have to think, we have to plan, we have to be creative. He also said, Atlas continued, that anyone who hurts a human in front of their cubs is making a fatal mistake, because human cubs don't run. We don't hide. We remember, and we wait. And when we're done waiting, Luna finished, we make sure it never happens again. Captain Vaughn's comm chirped again. He listened, and I watched his scales pale further. What is it? I managed to ask. 3 ships just entered scanning range, Vaughan said quietly. Krellian configuration, Raider class. They're heading straight for the station. Luna and Atlas exchanged glances. The rest of their crew, Atlas said. They'll want revenge for their friends. This station has minimal defenses, I said. Panic rising. We're a mining colony, not a military outpost. If they attack, they won't, Luna interrupted calmly. Not if we give them what they want. And what's that? Vaughan demanded. Luna smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Us. 10 minutes later, I was in station command watching 3 Krellian raider ships position themselves around Epsilon 9 like predators circling wounded prey. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely operate the comm panel. Unidentified vessels, this is Station Epsilon 9, I transmitted. You are in violation of treaty space, withdraw immediately, or we will be forced to. Save it, Station Master, a voice snarled back. We're here for the humans who killed our brothers. Hand them over and we'll leave peacefully. Luna stood beside me, still covered in her father's dried blood, looking completely calm. Atlas was checking something on a datapad he'd retrieved from their ship. Tell them we'll meet them, Luna said. Bay 12, 30 minutes. You can't be serious, Vaughan protested. They'll kill you. Probably try, Atlas agreed. But here's the thing, Captain. Our father is alive. He's going to recover, and that means whoever hurt him needs to understand something very important. What's that? I whispered. Luna looked at me with those predator eyes, and I finally understood what had been bothering me since the moment these cubs walked off that damaged ship. They weren't scared because they didn't need to be. They were the scariest things on this station. They need to understand that hurting Marcus Rain was the last mistake they'll ever make, Luna said softly, because his cubs are watching, And we don't forgive. We don't forget. Atlas looked up from his datapad, and we definitely don't lose. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of activity. Vorn tried to organize a security response, but Luna vetoed it. She and Atlas wanted to handle this themselves. They disappeared into their ship and emerged with equipment that made even Vorn take a step back. "Where did you get military-grade pulse rifles?" he demanded. "Amazon," Atlas said seriously. "Free shipping if you're a Prime member." I still don't know if he was joking. Bay 12's airlock opened, and 20 Krellian raiders poured through. They were big, armed, and clearly expecting easy prey. Their leader, a massive specimen with decorative scars covering his scales, pointed a plasma cutter at the cubs. "You killed my brothers," he snarled. "Die slow, human spawn." Luna tilted her head. "No." What happened next was the most efficient display of violence I've ever witnessed. The cubs moved like they'd rehearsed this dance 1,000 times. Atlas went low, Luna went high. Pulse rifles fired in controlled bursts. Pirates fell. It was over in 90 seconds. 20 raiders, all dead. The cubs didn't even look winded. Luna walked over to the pirate leader, who was still alive but missing most of his lower body. She knelt down so he could see her face. "My father is going to be fine," she said softly. "But I want you to deliver a message before you die. Can you do that?" The pirate gurgled something that might have been assent. "Tell whoever's listening on the other side," Luna continued, her voice gentle as a lullaby, "that Marcus Rain's family is watching. Tell them we remember every face, every name, every ship." She smiled. "Tell them we're coming for all of them, one by one, until the entire raider fleet learns what happens when you make humans bleed in front of their cubs." The pirate died with that message burning in his eyes. Atlas looked up at the 3 remaining ships, still hovering outside the station. He activated the comm system. "This is Atlas Rain," he said calmly. "You have 60 seconds to jump to FTL and never return. If you don't, we'll board your ships and show you exactly what we did to your friends. Your choice." 55 seconds later, all 3 ships engaged their drives and vanished into the void. The station was silent. Then, from the medbay, a weak but familiar voice came over the comm. "Luna? Atlas? What did you do?" Luna pressed the comm button, her voice suddenly young again, suddenly just a cub talking to her father. "Nothing, Dad. We just taught some bullies a lesson. You always said that's important." Marcus Rain's laugh was weak but genuine. "That's my girl. That's my boy. I'm so proud of you both." I stood there in Bay 12, surrounded by the bodies of 20 pirates, watching 2 human cubs who'd just committed wholesale slaughter smile at their father's praise. And I realized something that every species in the galaxy would eventually learn. Humans are terrifying, yes, but human cubs protecting their family? They're something else entirely. They're what nightmares have nightmares about.